Hello, everybody, and good morning. Welcome to the Data Center Solutions Open Network webinar. My name is Robert Holly. I will be moderating this today for our two speakers. We thank you very much for joining us. As a reminder, this is being recorded and it will be available on the BrightTalk Network and on each individual company's website after this presentation. Before we get started today, I think it's important to address what's going on around the community and around the world today, and the importance that data centers are providing to their customers, and the importance of networks for their customers today. As we can see, a lot of people are being forced to work remote. A lot of people are forced to work in uncommon and unfamiliar conditions today. So it's important for everything that you do, whether you're using a single source vendor, a multi-source vendor, a managed service provider, or your own company's IT staff, have patience in this time and have understanding in what we are trying to accomplish for us and for our customers. Today we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to look at the history of open networks. We're going to look at different varying Whitebox solutions. We're going to talk about open network NOS options. We're also going to look at how the evolution of data center design has changed. From there, we will also look into intent-based networking, what it is, what it means to different customers, and finally, we'll talk about operating the modern data center in an open network framework. So again, at the end of the day, our goal is to provide you with not only information of what open networks do, but also how they can help you run and operate your data center. A little bit about our solutions. Who are we, right? We'll go from a very high level. EPS is a global distributor of everything that you could want within the data center, whether it's hardware, software, cables, all the way down into the business as an overarching solution. Apstra is a software first orchestration and management solution within the data center. So as we look at that, we don't look specifically at operating systems, we work with varying operating systems across the board. Meeting our speakers today, very high level, we have Robert Lancaster, who resides in Denver, Colorado. He is a solutions architect with Apstra. And we have Alan Fagan, who is the director of sales for North America, residing in Boston for EPS Global. And with that, I'd like to start off and introduce Alan. If you would like to go ahead, I will turn the records over to you.
Thank you very much, Robert, and thank you everybody for giving us some of your time today. I'm going to spend some time talking about a number of aspects, the history of open networking, Whitebox Solutions, what they are, and I'm going to finish up by looking at some network operating systems. Before I get into that, I'm going to talk, a little bit about why organizations look at open networking in the first place. Firstly, open networking provides much greater flexibility and feature velocity than a traditional monolithic installation. Organizations can easily change hardware vendors if another vendor provides better service or better pricing. They're not locked into one vendor. And this flexibility also enables the organization to adopt new technology sooner. Secondly, open networking enables increased management efficiency. With open networking and SDN, many tasks can be automated and pre-programmed. And lastly then, open networking with Whitebox switches provides significant cost savings to the organization. Companies typically reduce the cost of the network infrastructure by 50% or even more when they implement an open networking solution. So moving on to the slide then to talk about the history of open networking. It really began in 2008 with the development of OpenFlow in Stanford University. Before OpenFlow, control data and management plane, they all resided on the switch. And what OpenFlow did was it allowed for the separation of the control and management layers from the data plane. So the switches ultimately just transport the data. The brains of the network reside elsewhere. In 2009, Facebook, their infrastructure really struggled to keep up with the new features on their platform particularly video and image sharing. So they realized that they had to redesign their network from bottom to top. So they had a team of engineers to conduct this redesign. It took 2 years. It was completed in 2011, and that infrastructure is still in place. It's still going. Out of that redesign, Facebook, Intel, and Rackspace, they published all the designs, and along with Goldman Sachs, they started the Open Compute Project, or OCP. The goal of OCP was to create a movement in hardware to foster creativity and collaboration, very similar to what was seen with open source software. The next development then was the Open Networking Foundation, or ONF, and that was set up to promote open networking and SDN. And really what they do is they put products coming out of OCP into platforms and end-to-end solutions. Out of ONF came the Open Networking Operating System, or NOS, and that's really a controller for the ONF ecosystem. 2016 saw the introduction of TIP, or TIP, which is the Telecom Infrastructure Project, and that was established to promote open networking principles in telco infrastructure. And one of their initiatives is CORD, which is Central Office re-architected as a data center. 2016 also saw Microsoft contributing Sonic to OCP, a real sign of open networking principles becoming more and more widely received. And then last year we saw carriers beginning deployment of open networking solutions in their networks. We can move to the next slide, Robert. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Whitebox Solutions now. And Whitebox has really started with the hyperscalers. You know, we mentioned Facebook already, other hyperscalers like Amazon, Google, Microsoft. You know, for their data centers, they didn't need all the bells and whistles that a branded switch from the likes of Cisco or Juniper had. They really just needed the switch to transport data. So they started going directly to the manufacturers of the switches to get them. There's a lot of terminology around this, and I want to spend a little time just talking about what some of these terms really mean. You know, the first one is a bare metal. So a bare metal switch is a switch just with ONI on it, so it's open network install environment. And that's basically a switch that has a bootloader that allows you to install a network operating system on top of it, okay? The next one then is a white box. And this is a switch with the network operating system installed. So, you know, an example here is Cumulus. There's a lots more, you know, Ocnos from IP Infusion is another example. We then have bright boxes. And a bright box, the best way to think of a bright box is really it's a branded white box. And Dell and HP are good examples of companies who have bright boxes in the market. And that's really, it's a white box with a brand name on it. Some people like to have the comfort blanket of a recognized brand name in their network. They like having a Dell or an HP, and this was really designed for them. The merchant silicon then refers to the off-the-shelf chips or the switch ASICs that are in the network switches. And 66% of switches contain merchant silicon from the likes of Broadcom, Cavium, and Barefoot. The most popular white box in this space is EdgeCore. And Acton are the parent company of EdgeCore, and they are the ODM, or original design manufacturer, of the switches. And most Acton switches have someone else's name on them. You know, they make the switches for the large brand names like a Juniper, like a Cisco, like an Extreme, but they have their own brand then, which addresses the open networking market, and that's EdgeCore. And that's becoming a larger and larger part of their business. There are other manufacturers in this space, and good examples of those are Delta, Quanta, and Celestica. Next slide, please, Robert. So Along with the hardware, earlier on we talked about a massive project by Facebook to redesign the network that took them 2 years, and they had a lot of engineers on it. Well, most companies don't have the luxury of having that army of engineers to operate the network or to design it, and that's really where these software companies come in. They provide network operating systems, which fundamentally allows non-hyperscalers to take advantage of open networking. The software allows them to build using commodity hardware and open networking principles. So there's a number of players in this software space. The first ones that we're going to look at are Cumulus, IP Infusion, and Peak 8. And these are really designed to operate individual devices. And each of these guys, they really have their own niche. So Cumulus are very prevalent in the data center. IP Infusion, you'd see a lot in internet exchanges. And Peak 8 have a lot of traction in large enterprise data centers. And, there's lots more out there. This technology is being widely adopted. It's not, customers are not guinea pigs at this stage. 34% of Fortune 50 companies have already adopted Cumulus technology in their production environment. So this is out there and being used as we speak. Okay. The next guys we're looking at is more about centrally managed. So a good example of that is Pluribus, and that allows you to manage multiple data centers from any switch, and they do not have a separate physical controller. Big Switch Networks, who recently became part of Arista, they use a hardware controller, and again, that is the brains of the operation, and the switch is just used to forward on data, okay? And that brings us down to the management and automation, and Apstra, their product called AOS, which allows you to design, implement, and manage a network from start to finish. And you'll hear a lot more on Apstra from Robert, and I will hand over to him now and allow him to talk more about what Apstra do. And again, thank you very much, everybody.